Hi, welcome back to A Moment with Marta. So today what I'd like to talk about is OCD. Um, OCD, for people that aren't aware, is obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's very common for people that live with autism to also have OCD. And a lot of times the reason they go hand in hand is just due to some of that sensory input, that need for things to be consistent and part of a routine. But I wanted to describe what OCD actually feels like. A lot of people use that phrase, people that like to have things like really organized in a certain way, and maybe they have some OCD-like tendencies, but it's not actually true OCD. So my daughter, when she was a toddler, she's like 2, and she started exhibiting some major OCD like tendencies, and I really believe that she's OCD. So we have tile on our floor in the kitchen and in the living area, and then our hallway that goes back to all of our bedrooms is carpeted. So there would be times where she needed to walk in such a way that her certain foot hit the tile in a certain rhythm. She had to cross that barrier a certain way and not touch the lines. And if she didn't get it right, she would go all the way back to the end of the hallway and try again, and she would keep doing it until it was right to her. Another instance was there was a stain on the floor in her room, and she would walk into her room and hop on that stain and then walk to another part of the room, and it was very consistent. So it really rocked her world when I was steam cleaning the carpets and I got rid of that stain. So that's a couple of examples for my daughter. My son, when he was 18 months old, I have picture frames and things that are on display around the house, like a lot of families do, and I purposefully have them at an angle. And I'm walking by one day, and the picture frame is completely parallel to the bookshelf that it's on. So I'm not thinking anything about it. I just go and I straighten it to how I want it at an angle. It's like at a 45-degree angle, and I walk back, and then it's parallel again. So I move it and I start walking away, and I notice my son immediately go over there and straighten it. So for him, he needed to have that kind of order. And again, this is, there's all kinds of people use that phrase, oh, I'm OCD, very loosely, but the way it feels, I have OCD, and the way it feels, it's like an itch in the brain, and it doesn't feel right. Like, you literally have a feeling when something is not quite right, or you're trying to do something in a certain way, and then when it's done the way you need it to, you have that feeling of closure and feeling of things being complete. So for me, certain lids had to go with certain bottles. When I brush my teeth, it has to be like a certain length of time, and then I stop, and then I know that I'm finished. When I'm getting toilet paper or paper towels or whatever, like, I have to count to the number 5, and I do that everywhere. But probably one of the most intense ones was, kids, they have all their little toys, they have little pieces that go with each set. There's puzzle pieces that go with the puzzles. So I always keep all the pieces to everything all together. And, we were never really just about having all the toys out all at one time anyway. But if there was an instance where, for whatever reason, a particular piece was misplaced or lost, I would have to hunt for it until I found it, because it gave me anxiety. And I would joke and say, oh, my mantra is a place for everything and everything in its place. But truly, I couldn't sit down and relax at the end of the day unless I knew that everything was in its place. And bless my husband's heart, he wanted me to be able to just sit down and relax, and realized that I couldn't. He'd get up and help me, and eventually we'd find whatever it was, and I'd have that feeling of peace. But the whole while I'm searching, I'm feeling anxious and frantic, and it's like there's an itch in my brain and I can't scratch it. And so it can be a very intense reaction. And so that's a lot of times why OCD can go hand in hand with autism. Just that need for repetition, that need for order amongst all of the chaos. And so it's very common for there to be a diagnosis of OCD along with autism. And that's what it feels like. It's not something that the person can control. I mean, when you look at shows that have people like washing their hands like a certain number of times, or turning on and off a light switch a certain number of times, obviously that's a form of more severe OCD, and that's what it feels like. It's like this itch in the brain, and it doesn't feel right until you get to that point where you've done it enough times. So for me, when I'm brushing my teeth, like, I'll do it and I'll keep going until it actually feels right to stop. Otherwise, I'll just keep going, and my gums, will even bleed. But the feeling in my brain is that I'm not done, and so I'm opening up and just kind of sharing some personal things about that, because it helps to parents better understand your kids. Why? I mean, it's obsessive compulsive disorder. It is a compulsion. It is something that you obsess about, and it's not something that you have control over. In your brain, it literally feels like an itch in your brain, and you can't turn it on or off. And it's very unsettling if I have to leave the house and something is not in its place and I didn't manage to find something. Or, for my daughter, if she didn't walk in a certain way, and she would just get very upset, like, I need to try again. And I would see her do it like 5, 6, 7 times. And then if she managed to get it just right, then it was okay. She would keep going forward. But if it wasn't right, it wasn't right. And it was a feeling that she had. And of course, she was little, and so it wasn't something that she could tell me. But if you observe that kind of behavior in your child, in a student, if you're a therapist or a doctor, in a person that you're working with, that's what they're going through. That's the feeling, and that's why they are exhibiting some of those types of behaviors, because it's something that's just beyond their control. It's a certain feeling, and it literally is when it's right, and it feels right, and you don't have that itch in your brain anymore. So my hope is that this video just kind of helps to bring a little bit more understanding to what true OCD actually is, what it feels like. And because it's so common for people to be like, oh, I'm OCD, like I can't handle this being a certain way, and it might be an OCD like tendency, in a type A kind of person's personality. They're super organized, and it drives them nuts if the one thing is quite, not quite right. I mean, yeah, those are certainly tendencies. People can have those, but how it feels to truly have OCD and something to be not quite right, for a lid to be different on a cup or a bottle than what is supposed to be on there, or for a toy to be missing, and you can't rest until you've hunted it down and found it, and it's in its spot, which bless my poor son's heart, he has that as well. And when my kids were younger, I mean, I was always with them and playing with them, and so I'd have an idea of where to look. But if I wasn't there for some reason and something got misplaced or whatever, there would be a serious meltdown, and I'm frantic because I have no context of where to even look for whatever it is. So anyway, that just helps to bring a little bit more understanding to what is actually going on in that person's mind. And it's a thing where you have this closure once it feels right. So when my daughter was able to walk from the carpet onto the tile in the right way with the right foot in the right rhythm, it felt right. For me, when I'm able to find a piece and put it in its spot, it feels right, and I can actually relax at that point. For my son, having the frame be completely parallel or things be in their place, that's what feels right for him. And so yes, you can work on some of it, but that's what is actually going on in the brain. That's what it feels like to have OCD. And so if we can put a feeling there, if we can put a face to something, it just allows us to have better understanding. It helps us as we're trying to support people that are impacted by autism and that don't have control over some of those compulsions and some of those things. And it allows us to just extend grace to if there's something that's just really beyond somebody's control. It's just a signal. It's a signal in the brain. It's not something that you purposefully can change or alter. Can you learn how to cope with something? Sure. You can learn to cope. And that's how we can best support people, with autism that struggle in areas like having OCD. But anyway, thanks for listening. And until next time on A Moment with Marta. Bye.